Imagine stepping into a room full of billionaires, Ivy League PhDs, and polished elites, and being laughed at the second you walk in. They saw her old jacket. They saw her worn-out shoes. What they didn't see was the mind that would soon leave them speechless. This is the incredible story of Emma Carter, a simple woman who shattered arrogance with nothing but her brilliance, her courage, and her quiet fire. Stay with us, because what happens next will not only surprise you, it might just change how you see the world. The lobby of the Columbia Heights Convention Center shimmered under towering glass chandeliers. Gleaming marble floors reflected the polished shoes and designer heels of the country's tech elite. Conversations floated in the air, polished, sharp, layered with ambition. Everywhere, sapphire badges gleamed against tailored suits and cocktail dresses, the symbols of achievement, money, and connections. And then there was Emma Carter. She stood awkwardly near the entrance, adjusting the worn strap of her leather satchel. Her jeans, faded from years of use, barely brushed the tops of her scuffed sneakers. An old corduroy jacket hung loosely from her shoulders, sleeves slightly frayed. Her chestnut brown hair was pulled into a low, messy bun, a rubber band barely holding it together. Emma's sapphire badge was genuine. It swung from her lanyard like everyone else's. Only hers had been handed to her at the last minute, an afterthought from Marcus Rowe, her old friend and mentor who insisted she come. "Come see the future you helped inspire," Marcus had told her, his laugh kind and knowing. Emma didn't care for the crowd. She was here for him. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and tried to stay unnoticed. But it was impossible. A few feet away, a trio of young tech entrepreneurs in slick black blazers noticed her. One of them, a guy with an expensive haircut and an even more expensive Rolex, elbowed his friend and chuckled loudly enough for her to hear. "Hey, looks like someone got lost. Maybe she's looking for the janitor's closet," he said, grinning. His friend snorted. "Or delivering sandwiches. Poor girl. Must be terrifying to realize you're at the wrong party." Emma heard them. She smiled tightly, pretending not to. The sting was familiar. She'd felt it 1,000 times before at the county fair, when judges had dismissed her homemade turbine because it wasn't shiny enough. At tech competitions where her prototypes were laughed at until they outperformed the glossy models. At job interviews where executives stared at her thrift store shoes instead of her resume. She hugged her satchel closer and moved toward the auditorium. "Just here for Marcus," she reminded herself. "Not here to prove anything." At the end of the gleaming hallway, a massive screen displayed in bold letters, "Aurelius Innovation Summit, Advancing Humanity." Beneath the title, a carousel of smiling faces flashed. Founders, CEOs, professors, inventors. Emma's face, of course, was nowhere among them. She slipped quietly into the edge of the main hall, where a sea of white tablecloths, crystal water glasses, and nameplates awaited the summit's privileged few. The scent of oud and polished ambition filled the air. As she found an empty chair in the back, pulling it carefully so as not to make a sound, she didn't notice the calculating eyes of Vanessa Lee, a rising star CEO with a platinum Stanford degree and a well-practiced smirk, watching her like a hawk spotting easy prey. The stage was set. The clock had started ticking. Emma Carter, the nobody in the old jacket, had just entered a den of lions, and they were already sharpening their teeth. The summit's keynote session had barely begun when Emma felt the sting of 100 glances slicing through the ballroom's polished air. She sipped from a tall glass of water, trying to ignore the low hum of murmured conversations swirling like invisible knives. Some faces looked curious. Most looked dismissive, a few openly mocking. At the front of the stage, the host, a polished man with a Hollywood smile and a voice like silk, was introducing the panelists for the opening debate. Marcus Rowe stood among them, his gray hair and warm smile a rare hint of authenticity in a sea of manufactured personas. Emma's chest warmed with pride. He deserves every bit of this. But her brief bubble of comfort burst when she heard a soft, deliberate voice behind her. "Excuse me, miss," the voice said, each syllable dipped in condescension. "I think you're sitting in the reserved section, for speakers and special guests only." Emma turned. Vanessa Lee stood there, her slim figure wrapped in a sharp white power suit that probably cost more than Emma's entire truck back home. Her black hair was sleek and perfect, her heels tapping lightly on the marble floor. Several people nearby looked up, grinning in anticipation. Emma met Vanessa's gaze calmly. "I'm here with Dr. Rowe," she said, voice steady. "He invited me." Vanessa's lips curled into a smile, the kind that wasn't meant to be friendly. "Oh, how lovely," she said sweetly, before turning to the crowd around them and adding, "Always nice when speakers bring their fan clubs." Soft laughter rippled through the audience like a tiny, cruel tide. Emma felt the familiar tightening in her stomach but refused to give Vanessa the satisfaction of seeing it. She stood. "Would you like to check my badge?" She lifted her lanyard, showing her official guest pass, the same gleaming sapphire badge hanging from everyone else's neck. Vanessa's smile faltered for the briefest second before recovering. "Of course," she said smoothly, "but since you're here, maybe you'd like to participate." Emma blinked. Participate? Vanessa turned to the moderator on stage and raised her hand. "Before we begin," she called out, her voice light and musical, "perhaps we could warm up with a brain teaser for the audience." The moderator, sensing drama and loving it, grinned. "Well, why not? What do you have in mind, Vanessa?" Vanessa flashed a bright smile. "A little engineering puzzle. I think it'll be illuminating." The moderator chuckled. "Go ahead." Vanessa turned back to Emma, and for the first time, her eyes gleamed with open malice. She strode to a whiteboard mounted at the edge of the stage, picked up a black marker, and began to scrawl an intricate problem involving load distribution in multivariable systems, the kind of real-world nightmare that had broken seasoned PhD candidates. The audience craned their necks, murmuring. Some pulled out their phones again, poised to capture the disaster. Vanessa capped the marker with a flourish and turned, handing it toward Emma like a sword offered for execution. "Why don't you give it a shot?" she said sweetly. "Show us what you've got." A heavy silence fell over the hall. Hundreds of eyes locked onto Emma. Some smirked, some pitied her. Most waited for her to crumble. Emma's heart thudded once. A sharp, painful beat, then steadied. She adjusted the strap of her satchel, stepped forward slowly, and took the marker from Vanessa's hand. It felt warm, almost burning, in her fingers. Vanessa leaned in slightly, her perfume overwhelming. "If you want," she whispered, just loud enough for Emma to hear, "you can just say you're not smart enough. No shame." Emma smiled, small, polite, and then she turned toward the whiteboard. The room held its breath. Emma stood before the whiteboard, the black marker poised loosely in her hand. Behind her, the summit's elite rustled in their chairs, silk suits whispering against leather, manicured fingers tapping on tablet screens, stifled chuckles blooming like weeds in an open field. Vanessa Lee crossed her arms smugly, already savoring her small victory. The problem loomed across the whiteboard, dense, tangled, a spiderweb of load equations and constraint variables that could snare the sharpest mind. Emma's chest rose and fell once, slow and steady. She saw it all at once, not in chaotic fragments like most would, but as a structure clean and beautiful, the way a carpenter sees the house hidden in raw timber. The world faded, the marble floors, the chandeliers, the stifling, scented air. It all became distant noise. Emma's mind bent around the problem the way it always had around machinery back home, the way she'd fixed her father's broken combine when she was 12, the way she'd designed a water purifier out of scrap for the local firehouse. Numbers were just puzzles, and puzzles had solutions. She moved the marker to the whiteboard, slowly, calmly, a single smooth stroke, no hesitation. First, she restructured the variables, slashed unnecessary steps, isolated pressure points, collapsed redundancies. The marker squeaked faintly with every stroke. The room, however, stayed utterly silent. One line led to another, blossoming outward like a tree unfurling in spring. Her hand didn't tremble. Her breathing didn't quicken. She didn't look back to see the faces of the judges waiting for her to fail. Instead, she moved with the easy grace of someone who knew, not hoped, not prayed, but knew she belonged in front of that board more than any silk-tied executive in that entire hall. 3 minutes later, Emma clicked the marker closed and placed it carefully on the whiteboard ledge. The entire left side of the board now bore a clean, minimalist solution. Elegant, efficient, unarguable. Emma turned around slowly. No one moved. No one spoke. A few jaws hung slightly open. Phones that had been recording half for mockery now caught silent disbelief. Vanessa's smug expression had frozen halfway into confusion. Emma glanced politely at the moderator. "I'm done," she said simply. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Cut through the ballroom like a blade. The moderator blinked. His mouth opened, then closed. Somewhere in the front row, Dr. Leonard Hale, the legend of structural engineering, slowly rose from his chair, his worn leather satchel dropping forgotten at his feet. He made his way to the whiteboard, adjusting his glasses. The audience watched, holding their collective breath, as Dr. Hale traced Emma's work with a trembling fingertip. Seconds stretched like hours. Finally, he turned toward the crowd, his voice low but clear. "This is not only correct," he said, each word carrying the weight of iron. "It is the cleanest, most efficient solution I have ever witnessed to this problem." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Phones lowered, laptops snapped shut. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Vanessa's face drained of color. Emma simply stepped aside and sat back down, her hands folded neatly in her lap. No smile, no gloating, just silence. The same silence that now screamed louder than any applause could. For a few precious moments, the grand ballroom at Columbia Heights stood still, as if the chandeliers themselves held their breath. Dr. Leonard Hale stepped away from the whiteboard, his face a mix of wonder and disbelief. He adjusted his glasses again, as though hoping the lens had deceived him the first time. It hadn't. Around him, conversations stirred like a brewing storm, low and urgent. "Who is she?" someone whispered. "Was that beginner's luck?" Another muttered, voice strained. Emma sat quietly at her small table, her satchel still at her feet. Her fingers tapped idly on her thigh. Not from nerves, but from the old habit of counting rhythms, something she used to do while soldering tiny circuits by candlelight at home. Across the room, Vanessa Lee was frozen, her white suit glowing harshly under the spotlights that now felt unbearably hot. Her carefully rehearsed mask of superiority cracked. Not all at once, but in little tremors that betrayed the truth. She tried to recover. "Well," she said loudly, flipping her glossy hair back with a forced laugh. "One problem doesn't make a career." The words fell flat. No one laughed. No one smirked. Instead, a ripple of skepticism bloomed across the room, directed not at Emma, but at her. From the far side of the hall, the moderator cleared his throat awkwardly. "Miss Carter," he said, the slightest tremor in his voice. Would you mind joining the stage?" Heads turned sharply. Someone dropped a silver pen that clattered against the marble floor. Emma blinked. She hadn't expected this. For a brief second, every insecurity she'd ever carried, every sideways glance, every backhanded compliment, every door politely shut in her face, roared up like a wave. But she stood anyway, not quickly, not dramatically. She simply rose, gathered her satchel, and walked calmly toward the stage, her sneakers squeaking faintly against the polished floor. The crowd parted before her, an unconscious movement, like trees bending in a strong wind. Vanessa stood rigid at the foot of the stage, watching Emma approach with a brittle smile. Emma caught her eye and gave her a small, polite nod. Not victory, not mockery, just acknowledgement that somehow seemed to sting the most. As Emma reached the stage, the moderator extended a hand to help her up the stairs, a gesture that moments ago would have been unthinkable. Microphones hissed as tech crews scrambled to adjust sound levels. Emma stood behind the clear podium now, facing a sea of expectant faces. Not mocking, not yet adoring, but no longer indifferent. There was a crack in the marble now, a thin, undeniable fracture running straight through the heart of the summit's carefully polished pride. Emma tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, leaned slightly into the mic, and smiled, small and genuine. "I'm Emma Carter," she said, her voice steady. "And I'm just here to listen. But I guess it's a little late for that now." Laughter erupted, this time real, warm, surprising even Emma herself. Somewhere near the front, Dr. Hale chuckled openly, clapping once before quickly being joined by others. The air shifted. The lions were still lions, but they had begun to realize the mouse they had mocked was something else entirely. The next hour unfolded like a slow landslide. Where once there had been snickers and sidelong glances, now there was a ripple of genuine curiosity chasing Emma across the summit floor. After the session officially adjourned for a coffee break, Emma barely made it 2 steps from the podium before the first figure approached. Tall, silver-haired, tailored to perfection. Dr. Nathan Reyes, CEO of Polaris Dynamics, extended a hand. His firm grip swallowed hers. "Emma Carter," he said, smiling warmly. "That was extraordinary. Have you considered publishing your work? We could discuss a research grant." Before he could finish, another voice cut in. "Or perhaps an innovation fellowship," said Monica Thorne, director of the Titania Fund. Her diamond earrings caught the chandelier light, scattering tiny stars across her sharp cheekbones. She pushed a sleek card into Emma's palm. Full funding, no strings attached. Emma blinked at the card, overwhelmed. The Titania Fund usually reserved fellowships for Nobel nominees. More hands reached out, more business cards exchanged. "Could we talk privately? You belong with us, not wherever you came from. We need people like you." Emma barely registered their words. They buzzed around her like bees, urgent, insistent, desperate. All she wanted was a breath of fresh air. But behind their polished smiles and practiced charm, Emma saw the same thing in their eyes. Hunger. Not hunger to nurture or support. Hunger to own. To slap their brand on her like they did with every other brilliant mind they absorbed. She stepped back, clutching her satchel tightly, heart thudding. "Breathe, Emma, breathe." Amidst the growing crowd, a familiar figure pushed through. Marcus Rowe. His gray hair was slightly disheveled now, his forehead glistening under the hot lights, but his smile, his real smile, hadn't changed. He reached her at last, gently pulling her aside, shielding her with his presence. "You okay, kid?" he asked, voice low. Emma exhaled, shoulders sagging. "I think so." Marcus chuckled, giving her a gentle squeeze on the arm. "You just kicked the anthill," he said. "They're gonna scramble. Let them." Emma nodded, grateful. Vanessa Lee, meanwhile, watched the scene unfold from across the hall, arms crossed, jaw clenched so tightly that a small vein throbbed at her temple. Her empire of image, reputation, and polished perfection was cracking. And the woman who shattered it had done so without a title, without a degree, without permission. Desperation twisted in Vanessa's chest. If Emma accepted one of those offers, if she became a darling of the summit, Vanessa's name would fade, replaced by the legend of the simple woman who bested them all. No, not yet. Vanessa turned sharply on her heel and stormed toward the backstage corridor, her heels hammering against the marble like war drums. She still had one card to play, and if she couldn't beat Emma Carter on the whiteboard, she'd find another way. The backstage hallway of the convention center was colder, narrower, lined with forgotten boxes and tangled wires. Vanessa Lee's stilettos clicked sharply on the tile floor as she yanked her phone from her clutch. Her mind raced. "She made me look like a fool in front of everyone. That girl, that nobody, is stealing everything I've worked for." But reputations weren't just built with talent. They were protected with power. And Vanessa had power. She tapped a number quickly, a private contact from her university days. "Chris," she said when the line picked up. Her voice was low, urgent. "I need a favor, right now." Chris Connors, a tech blogger known for his sharp tongue and sharp elbows, barely waited for her to finish. "If it's juicy, I'm listening," he said, amusement dripping from his tone. Vanessa forced a smile, even though he couldn't see it. "I've got a story for you." A fraud at the summit. No credentials. Posing as an engineer. Stirring trouble. Chris whistled. A scandal? Sweet. You got proof. Vanessa glanced back toward the ballroom doors, where Emma's laughter floated faintly over the crowd. No official papers. No degrees. No publications. And somehow, she solved a problem top researchers couldn't. She let the insinuation hang heavy. Chris caught on immediately. You're saying she's a plant. A trick. Exactly, Vanessa said, her voice tightening like a noose. Make it go viral. Before the next session. Consider it done, Chris said. The call ended. The first domino fell. Vanessa allowed herself a slow, poisonous smile. Back in the main hall, Emma was talking to Marcus and a few hesitant organizers when she noticed the shift. It was subtle at first. A few glances, a couple of phones flashing suspicious photos, an audible whisper. Who invited her, anyway? Emma's stomach nodded. She recognized this game. She'd seen it played before, not in ballrooms, but in schoolyards and small-town council meetings, where envy was the currency and truth was the casualty. Marcus noticed it too. His brow furrowed. You feel that? He muttered. Emma nodded slowly. A few moments later, one of the junior organizers approached her. A tall young woman, fidgeting with the hem of her skirt. Miss Carter, she said awkwardly. There's, been some concerns raised. Concerns? Emma echoed. The girl flushed. About your credentials. Some people are saying you, weren't properly vetted. That you might be impersonating an engineer. A sharp silence fell between them. Emma stared at her, feeling the floor tilt just slightly under her feet. Behind the organizer, a few summit attendees were whispering, eyes darting toward Emma like she was a bomb about to detonate. Vanessa leaned casually against a pillar nearby, pretending to scroll on her phone, but her smirk was unmistakable. Marcus bristled, his voice cutting. This woman has built machines that have saved lives. She's written algorithms smarter than half the companies in this room. And you're questioning her because she doesn't wear a Rolex. The organizer winced, stepping back. Emma held up a hand, calming Marcus. It's okay, she said softly. Her heart ached, but her voice stayed even. It's not the first time. She looked around the room, really looked, and saw the fear in their eyes. Not fear of her. Fear of what she represented. That greatness might exist outside their golden gates. That someone without pedigree, polish, or papers could expose the thinness of their power. Emma squared her shoulders. She could walk away. She could leave them to drown in their whispers and insecurities. Or she could finish what had begun the moment she touched that whiteboard. Emma tightened the strap on her satchel. She wasn't running. Not this time. The main hall of the Columbia Heights Convention Center buzzed with tension so thick, it was almost physical, like a storm suspended just above their heads. Emma stood alone in the center of it all. She could feel the stares drilling into her back, the muttered accusations swirling in the corners of the room. No badge, no degree, no formal letters after her name. In their world, she might as well have been invisible. And yet, here she was, breathing, standing, refusing to bend. From the corner of her eye, she saw Marcus clenching and unclenching his fists, torn between stepping in and letting her fight her own battle. Emma gave him the smallest shake of her head. This is mine. Across the room, Vanessa Lee leaned gracefully against a velvet pillar, still wearing that faint, satisfied smile, the kind of smile that said, I've already won. The moderator, face pale and uncertain, shuffled awkwardly onto the stage, clearing his throat into the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice cracking slightly, we've had a situation raised, concerns about an attendee's credentials. The room shifted, a sea of heads turning toward Emma. To maintain the summit's standards, we ask that anyone presenting research or taking part in summit activities be properly vetted, and he faltered when he saw Emma climbing the stage steps. Without waiting for permission, without invitation, without apology, Emma took the microphone from his stunned hands and faced the crowd. Her palms were sweaty, Her heart rattled in her chest. But her voice was clear. "My name is Emma Carter," she said. Silence. "I was raised in Sandpoint, Idaho. A town so small we measure distance in gas tank stops, not miles." A few quiet chuckles rippled. Unsure, nervous. "I don't have a degree. I don't have framed awards. I don't have a resume polished by billion-dollar institutions." She smiled faintly, but it was the smile of someone who had been tempered in fire. "What I do have," she continued, "is a life spent solving real problems. Problems that didn't care about where I studied. Problems that didn't wait for credentials." The ballroom was utterly silent now. Emma's eyes swept the room, meeting Vanessa's gaze full on. "I didn't come here to prove anything to anyone," Emma said. "But when you handed me that marker, you challenged me." She turned slightly, gesturing at the whiteboard where her elegant solution still gleamed under the spotlights. "And I met that challenge with the only thing I've ever trusted more than paper: my work." The room shifted again, a different kind of movement now. Not shrinking away, leaning closer. Emma set the microphone back in its stand. "If that's not enough for you," she said, her voice soft but razor-sharp, "I'm okay with that." She picked up her satchel, nodded once toward Marcus, and began to walk off the stage, away from them all. For a heartbeat, no one moved. And then it happened. A single clap. Dr. Leonard Hale, standing at the back of the hall, his face fierce with respect. One clap, then two, then a wave. Real applause, rising like a tide, roaring through the marble and gold walls of the Columbia Heights Convention Center. Emma froze halfway down the stairs, stunned. She turned slightly to see that the applause wasn't just from the outliers, the forgotten, the small startups. It was from the giants, too. The CEOs, the scholars, the investors, all rising. Vanessa stood frozen in place, color draining from her face. Because in that moment, she understood. Emma Carter didn't need their permission. She had their respect. And respect could not be bought, bribed, or whispered away. It had to be earned. And Emma had earned it the hard way. The real way. The applause thundered long after Emma had reached the marble floor. It chased her through the convention hall, following every quiet step she took. People leaned forward in their seats, some reaching out instinctively as if afraid she would disappear if they blinked. Offers would rain down on her soon. Contracts, speaking engagements, promises printed in gold letters. Emma didn't slow. She walked calmly through the shifting currents of ambition and admiration, her satchel swinging against her hip, her sneakers squeaking softly on the polished floor. At the entrance of the hall, Marcus Rowe waited, hands shoved into the pockets of his worn blazer. A proud, almost tearful grin stretched across his face. "That," Marcus said as she approached, "was the most beautiful middle finger I've ever seen." Emma laughed, a real laugh, pure and relieved. She wrapped her arms around him in a quick, fierce hug. "Thanks for bringing me here," she said quietly. Marcus pulled back, studying her face. "You sure you want to just walk away, kid? After that?" He gestured vaguely behind him, where the thunderous applause was still slowly fading. Emma glanced over her shoulder, seeing the hungry faces, the shiny business cards flashing like fishing lures. She turned back to Marcus, smiling. "I didn't come here for them," she said. "I came for you." Marcus's throat worked like he was swallowing a rock. He blinked hard. "Well, damn," he muttered. They made their way out through the towering glass doors into the crisp afternoon air. Sunlight sliced through the skyscrapers like golden knives. Emma took a deep, clean breath. No cologne, no artificial ambition, just the scent of city dust and the faint sweetness of spring coming. Behind them, in the chaos they left behind, summit staff scrambled. Vanessa Lee was cornered by reporters, her polished veneer cracking under the sudden, brutal scrutiny. Whispers about manipulation, rigging, and sabotage flooded faster than she could silence them. The summit would remember this day, not for her triumph, for her fall. Emma didn't look back. As she and Marcus walked down the wide stone steps toward the street, a silver car pulled up, summoned by Marcus earlier. "Where to?" the driver asked, smiling. Marcus glanced at Emma. She grinned. "Somewhere with good pie," she said. "And no Wi-Fi." Marcus barked a laugh, sliding into the back seat beside her. As the car pulled away, Emma leaned her forehead against the cool glass, watching the spires of the city blur into streaks of gold and gray. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she had anything to prove. The world could chase its titles, its velvet ropes, its empty applause. Emma Carter knew where she belonged. Not in ballrooms, not on stages, but anywhere her mind was free, her hands were busy, and her heart was full. The road unwound ahead of her, long, wide, and waiting. And she smiled, knowing she had already won the only prize that mattered, her freedom. Months later, across conference halls, boardrooms, and polished marble lobbies, people still spoke about the girl in the worn-out jacket who stood up to the best and brightest, and won. They spoke about her like a myth. Some said she was a secret prodigy trained in isolation. Some said she was the ghost of the old innovators, come back to humble the arrogant. Most simply called her what she had always been, real. Emma Carter never returned to the world of velvet ropes and golden chandeliers. She didn't need to. While others chased headlines and handshakes, Emma quietly built. Small companies in small towns found sudden miracles, water systems that never failed, affordable energy solutions for struggling communities, life-saving devices delivered without fanfare. No press releases, no sponsorships, just work that mattered. Marcus Rose stayed close by, his health fading but his pride in her growing sharper every day. He used to joke that Emma was building a world he was lucky just to live in. And when Marcus finally passed, Emma didn't give a speech. She didn't host a gala. She fixed up the community science center they had always talked about, the place where kids from dusty towns could tinker, dream, and dare to be more. The brass plaque outside the center simply read, "In memory of a man who believed, and a girl who proved him right." As for Vanessa Lee, the scandal stripped away her empire. One by one, doors closed that she once thought she owned. Whispers of betrayal and manipulation followed her like a shadow. She had built her castle from glass. Emma had cracked it with a single stroke of a marker. The Columbia Heights Convention Center, once a temple of prestige, now hung Emma's solution framed at the entrance, a silent reminder to every guest that genius doesn't wear a uniform. Sometimes, it walks in wearing scuffed sneakers and a second-hand jacket, carrying nothing but truth and the courage to be underestimated. Emma never chased the spotlight, but the world, quietly and inevitably, followed her light anyway. Before we close, let's take a moment to pray. May we all be protected from arrogance and misjudgment. May we be shielded from harm and guided toward truth and kindness. And may this story inspire us all to believe, not in appearances, but in the true strength that lives inside each of us. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who might need a little encouragement today. Until next time, stay strong, stay humble, and stay true.